Okay.
Uh, Good evening, friends. On behalf of the Computer Society of India, ACM and IEEE Computer Society, I extend a very warm welcome to everyone joining us in this unique evening program in which we are hosting two eminent personalities of computing in India. We are delighted to welcome our guest, Professor V. Rajaraman, who is regarded as the father of computer science and education in India, and Dr. S. Ramani, who is considered the father of Internet in India. Mr. Ghosh, the Managing Director of British of India, who has been publishing the books of Professor Rajaraman for almost 50 years. Mrs. Dharma, the better half of Professor Rajaraman, who has played a significant role in Professor Rajaraman's contribution. And I am happy to see a large number of colleagues of and friends of Professor Rajaraman and Dr. Ramani and our CSI senior members are participating in this program. I acknowledge the presence of Ms. Shivani, senior editor, and a team of professionals from Printing Hall of India who has worked with Professor Rajaraman in all his books. While a formal introduction of our guest may not be required for the audience,
two or three different servers of Collection Commission of India, and now also
for the audience present here, for the benefit of the younger generation participants, I would like to give a briefing about our guest. Professor Rajaraman, a PhD from Wisconsin University, is a Emeritus Professor of Supercomputing Education Research Center, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Professor Rajaraman has an illustrious academic career. He started his teaching in 1963 at IIT Kanpur. After a stint of about 2 decades as Professor of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering at IIT Kanpur, he moved to IISc Bangalore to set up the Supercomputer Education Research Center. From 1982 to 1994 at IISc, he was a Professor of Computer Science and also the Chairman of SERC. From 1994 to 2001, he served as the IBM Professor of Information Technology at Jawaharlal Nehru Center of Advanced Scientific Research. Professor Rajaraman has received numerous awards and recognitions for his contributions. In 1998, he was awarded the prestigious Padma Bhushan by the Government of India. His other awards include Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in 1976, Homi Bhabha Prize by UGC, Prakash Bhasin Award, ISTE Award for Excellence in Teaching Computer Engineering, and Rustam Choksi Award, and Zaheer Medal by the Indian National Science Academy. He is a lifetime contribution awardee of the Indian National Academy of Engineering and Computer Society of India. She has received Honorary Doctor of Science from IIT Kanpur and Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, CIBAP. Professor Rajaraman is a fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences, the Indian National Science Academy, the National Academy of Sciences, the Indian National Academy of Engineering, and the Computer Society of India. Professor Rajaraman is a popular author of several well-established and highly successful computer books and has published a large number of research papers in reputed national and international journals and conferences. And coming to our another guest, Dr. Srinivasan Ramani, he is a PhD from IIT Bombay. Dr. Ramani has worked as a researcher at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and also at the Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh, USA. From 1985, Dr. Ramani served as the founding director of National Center for Software Technology, Mumbai. Dr. Ramani played a key role in creating India's academic network, ERNET, which brought the Internet to India. He was inducted by the Internet Society into the Hall of Fame in 2014. Dr. Ramani served as the first director of Hewlett Packard Labs India from 2001 to 2007 and as a professor at International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore from 2007 to 2011. She has served as a member of the expert panel of advisors of the United Nations Task Force on ICT for Development. Dr. Amani is a fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the Computer Society of India. Dr. Ramani has served as the president of CSI and also a recipient of the CSI Lifetime Achievement Award. So with this brief welcome message and introduction, I would like to request Mr. Ashok Ghosh, MD of Printing Hall of India, with whom Professor VRS was wedded for almost 50 years. I think from 1970, most of his books were published by Printing Hall of India. And I request Mr. Ghosh to tell us what made Printing Hall of India to publish so many titles of Professor V. Rajaraman, including the current book which we are going to release today, that is the Groundbreaking Inventions of Information Technology and Communication Technology, and share his experiences with Professor Rajaraman. Mr. Ghosh, please.
Unmute. Is muted. Is
Mr. Ghosh.
not muted.
Yeah.
Sir, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself, please.
Is it unmuted now?
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
I thought
Yes.
host is okay. Again, I start Dr. Rajaraman, Dr. Dharma Rajaraman, Dr. S. Ramani, Mr. H.R. Mohan, Dr. P. Shaktivel, Mr. P.V. Subramanian, and distinguished participants. Good evening to all of you. It is a privilege and great honor for me to address on this occasion, on the occasion of the launch of Rajaraman's new book, Groundbreaking Inventions in Information and Communication Technology, written by Dr. Rajaraman, published by us, PHI Learning. Let me start with PHI Learning. This is the year we are celebrating 57 years in publishing in India. We publish high quality, affordable text and reference books for students across the globe. Our imprint is Eastern Economy Editions, and our motto is helping teachers to teach and students to learn. We have published more than 5,500 titles, and we have got 2,000 authors over the years. We publish in all subjects from A to Z or A to Z, which means from agriculture to zoology, all books. We publish in partnership with world-renowned publishers like Microsoft Press and university presses like MIT. Our books are followed by students and teachers from all over the world and India, particularly in all institutions of higher learning, IITs, IIMs, universities, technical universities. All the students and teachers, they follow our books. And our books are also included in model curricula of AICTE and UGC. All our books are available in print format as well as in digital format or e-books. Our books are also available in Kindle edition, Google Play edition, and Nook edition. And all our books are available with leading booksellers and, of course, Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal, and all other formats wherever you can purchase the books. We are also all the time looking for manuscripts from authors like Dr. Rajaraman. You know, I did his first book and I will talk about it. And those who are interested among the participants, they can always look at our website, which is phindia.com, and they can contact us for getting their books published. Now, our company, we started in the year 1963 And although Mr. H.R. Mohan was talking about Prentice Hall of India, of course, we started as Prentice Hall of India. Now we are PHI Learning. PHI Learning, PHI is, of course, short form of Prentice Hall of India, but we would rather like to be known as PHI Learning, and that is why it is PHI Learning now. And in 63, when we started the publishing company to print, only reprint foreign books under the PL 480 program with a lot of subsidy, and that is how we started. I came on board in this company in the year 1964, and I moved into PHI Learning from Times of India. And main purpose of me being taken on the board of PHI was to develop books written by Indian authors, because our future lie on books to be published originally from India by Indian authors. And that was my motto also. And the bunch of books I published between 65 and 69. And in that, Dr. Rajaraman's book was, I think, third on the list. And Rajaraman's book was the first computer book published in India. And I still remember when I visited IIT Kanpur. And, of course, first I went and checked myself in a guest house, which was more than a topmost deluxe hotel, IIT guest house, because all the Americans were coming and staying there. But from there, when I went to the computer center, I had to keep my briefcase in the bicycle stand, because I was not allowed to take the briefcase into the computer center. And then I had to take off my shoes, and then I entered Dr. Rajaraman's cabin. Today I remember, but it was a great experience, because since then, for more than 50 years, Dr. Rajaraman, he became my friend, philosopher, and guide, and very good support and help always. When I purchased my own computer, he was my advisor. When he got his Padma Bhushan, I organized a party that was 35 years of my company.
Constitutional body which is election commission, right? Rooted in the election commission.
Are you anybody telling anything to me? Shall I continue?
What I think is the current portion
I do not know. Is there any problem? Can I continue?
No, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Somebody is saying something, so I did not know whether.
No, they are not muted by mistake.
So these Principles of Computer Programming was the first book we did with Dr. Rajaraman. And after that, this book was, within the year, we, of course, sold the book in its first print run. Meanwhile, Dr. Rajaraman wanted to revise the book, and we had another book. We continued with Principles of Computer Programming, but the next book which we published with him was a book on Fortran. And it was Fortran, at that time, Fortran 4. And we, over the years, we had many editions, and Fortran changed from Fortran 4 to Fortran 77 and Fortran 90. And this book we have published or printed 54th print. It is now in its 54th print. And there are many other Dr. Rajaraman's books. I remember, like Computer-Oriented Numerical Methods. I think it must have gone into about 46th printing. Fundamentals of Computers also about 46th printing. So over the years, we have published in this 50 years association with Dr. Rajaraman, we have published, including this book, 24 books. And we are usually known as the publisher of Dr. Rajaraman's books. As far as Dr. Rajaraman is a great teacher, mentor, and great author. He is a pioneer in computer science education in India. He is a gem of a person, and as far as I am concerned, I think he's God's own man. That is my entire life's experience. Such a good man you rarely find anywhere, and his contribution to the field of computer education in India is unparalleled. As far as I am concerned, his wife, Mrs. Dharma Rajaraman, she has been with Dr. Rajaraman's publications throughout. The first book which Dr. Rajaraman wrote, that is the Principles of Computer Programming, it is written, the book is dedicated to Dharma. Dharma means Dr. Dharma Rajaraman. She herself has written 3 books for us, one book together with Dr. Rajaraman. And my association with them, because Mr. Mohan said that you say something about Dr. Rajaraman's, your association. My association with them is very pleasant. And when I talk about visit to IIT Kanpur and visit to Indian Institute of Science, where he later on moved, is very simple. The whole day is to work, and at least one dinner will be there at Rajaraman's house and cooked by Mrs. Dharma Rajaraman, and fantastic dinner, always looked for. And I was traveling frequently to Kanpur, maybe more for the manuscript more for the dinner than the manuscript. And then when I went to Indian Institute of Science, when Dr. Rajaraman moved there, and I was going there, then all these dinners were converted into lunch. So till recently, whenever last time I went, I always had lunch with Dr. Rajaraman. Now, as far as I am concerned, Dr. Rajaraman has written 24 books. Most of them are technical books, and all of you, the participants, will know about these books better than I need not have to speak. I would only say that we are very fortunate to have a person, at least I am very fortunate to have association with such a noble person in my life, and also with Mrs. Dharma Rajaraman. And today we are talking about the launch of the book, and this is the book Groundbreaking Inventions in Information and Communication Technology. This is the 24th book. Like his other books, this book is also written in very simple manner, without too much of jargon. With the help of this book, any reader can understand information and communication technology, how it has developed over the years. The book identifies and explains 15 groundbreaking inventions in ICT, from Fortran to deep learning. And this is a really good thing. The speakers who will be following me, including Dr. Rajaraman, will be talking more about the book. And before I conclude, I would like to say only thing, because there are so many learned people amongst the participants. I know there are 2 authors of mine. One of them was a student of Dr. Rajaraman, PCP, but he must be there. And Mr. Sadagopan is a famous man. He is also there, I understand. And I want to tell you that today I remember Dr. Rajaraman's teacher by the name of Dr. Sampath, because Dr. Rajaraman sent him to me when Dr. Sampath, I think in 1974, he was the director of IIT Chennai, IIT Madras at that time. And he also gave a lot of importance to books. Today, book is coming in 2 formats, but book is a book. And if you know, now in this pandemic time, this lockdown period, when we were talking about essential services, everything is essential excepting book. Book was the only item which we could not purchase even from Amazon. And that is very bad. So all these literate people who are sitting here, my appeal as a publisher, and also on behalf of the publishing fraternity, that please see that the book is an item which everybody wants to read, even in the lockdown period. Now, they have eased it, and now it is available. Now it is available. You can buy the book. You can buy the book from Amazon. That when lockdown started, it wasn't included. And this is one point I would like to tell. As far as Dr. Rajaraman's book is concerned, I think that this book should be purchased by anybody who has got anything to do with computer, because it is such a book. I have read it, and that is why I'm telling you. And thank you very much for giving me the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, for your excellent presentation on your experience with Professor Rajaraman, and also how PHI Learning has been instrumental in bringing out various titles of Professor Rajaraman. Now I would like to request Mr. Dharma Rajaraman, who has played a significant role along with Professor Rajaraman in bringing out so many titles in computer science and engineering. Mrs. Rajaraman, please.
You come this way. First, I should thank Mr. Ghosh for being so nice and talking so nicely about us. Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. It gives me great pleasure to be with all of you today on this happy occasion of the release of Professor Rajaraman's latest book, Groundbreaking Inventions and Information and Communication Technology. I would like to thank Mr. H.R. Mohan for requesting me to share my thoughts today as a team member. Thank you, Mr. Mohan. Going down the memory lane for us, groundbreaking for the writing of computer books happened in the year 1965. Yes, the journey started 55 years back. In order to teach computer programming to participants of intensive courses and engineering students of IIT Kanpur, notes were prepared by Professor Rajaraman. These notes, titled Computer Programming in Forgo, were printed in the Graphic Arts Department at IIT Kanpur and sold for 5 rupees in the campus bookstore. Very rudimentary. Then we thought, why not get these notes published as a book? But when we gave the set of notes to publishers, we found that they were reluctant to publish a computer science book. They felt there is no market for computer science books. Yes, that was the time. Finally, Mr. Neville Gosling of Prentice Hall of India agreed to publish the book with apprehension. Mr. Ashok Ghosh was there at that time. The stipulation was that the manuscript was to be submitted in a camera-ready form. We insisted that the price of the book must be below 15 rupees, lesser than the Xeroxing cost. We got the entire book typed using an ancient IBM electric typewriter, no right justification, A4 size paper was used, figures were drawn with Indian ink using Leroy set, bit messy to handle, and stencils. So finally, the book Principles of Computer Programming was printed in July 1969. The first print run was 3,000 copies. We were in for a big surprise. 2,500 copies were sold out within a period of 5 months. So the market was ready. So this is what the book looked like. Off-size with a tape computer programming written on that. Okay. From then on, writing books became a mission in our lives. For Professor, writing became a passion, still continues to be so. Thereafter, whenever a new computer language appeared on the horizon, books were written. Pascal, COBOL, Analog, C, and various avatars of Fortran. He believed that the best way to understand a new language and teach it is to write a book on that language. Yes, he used to say that. Alongside, books were written on hardware also. Recent trend for the past 3 years has been writing articles and books on the history of computers and computing, covering a period of 55 years. All through these years, Mr. Ashok Ghosh, Sagarika and Pushpita and the PHI team have given us immense support. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. This latest book, which is being launched today, is a compendium of the history of computers and computing. It falls in the category of non-textbook. It is a popular book, and I hope it becomes popular too. We went through a lot of tribulations, trepidations, and anxiety. Now, finally, the book is out, thanks to Mr. Ashok Ghosh. The core of this book is a series of 3 articles published in Resonance, a science journal. Professor will talk more about it. These articles were enhanced by adding more historical material and biographies of the innovators, inventors. These biographies have given the book a human touch, as though men behind the machines. Entire book, word to word, was typed by Professor 25th milestone, which includes the monograph also, in our journey. Yes, this is our 25th book, Silver Jubilee book. Yes. We are very, very happy about it getting launched today, that too in a grand style. We are fortunate to have Dr. Ramani with us. He is part of our family. We thank him for agreeing to release the book. Thank you, Dr. Ramani. It is indeed an honor for us. And the event is being held in a virtual mode using Google Meet. We could never foresee such a happening in our lifetime. Yes. Well, many of our friends have helped us in improving the form and content, subject matter and style of the book. Their names are mentioned in the preface. To conclude, we hope groundbreaking inventions in information and communication technology reaches out to a lot of people, both in India and outside. That is our sincere wish. Yes. With God's grace, we hope to continue with our mission with the same zeal and enthusiasm with all your support. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dharma Rajaraman, for your historical perspective to various books of Professor Rajaraman. Now I would like to request Dr. Ramani to kindly address us and formally release the book and felicitate Professor Rajaraman.
Could I ask the first slide to be shown?
Yes, sir. 1 second. Is it visible, sir?
That's fine. Now, at the moment, I don't even need a slide. If you like, there is a way of moving away from the slide. We can do that for the moment. Good. I will continue. It's a great pleasure to be here today with all of you. I think there are 172 people on the network. I'm very happy to have you all there, and many of you are friends. We have all grown up together over the 60 years or more. And firstly, let me talk about this. Why am I so excited about this book? Because this is a celebration. It's a celebration more than a book release. What is it we're celebrating? Something amazing has happened in our life. I have always been jealous of those characters who lived through the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. What a great time did they live through. But now I realize we are living through a time which is as exciting as the time of Renaissance and for the Industrial Revolution. I think the last 60 years have not been any less than any other 16 years in the history of the human race. Something miraculous has happened in our lives. Our lives have been changed for good. And Professor Rajaraman's book really celebrates this last 60 years, the great time that we have lived through. Usually, one doesn't recognize when they live through a revolution. Someone comes and writes an article or a book and say, hey, there was a green revolution, there was a white revolution, and gives it a name, then we all understand, oh yeah, that was a revolution. Really made a change. Okay, to see the impact of this revolution, I would like to think for a moment about the time when I finished 2 years of college and I had to choose a branch in engineering. And I went to the principal and asked him, sir, would you please let me apply for switching the college to go to another college where they offer electronics as a branch. He said, no, you can't do that. With the electronics, no one knows whether you will get a job. You'll be on the street. You won't be on the street. You finish the electrical engineering degree you are doing, then you will be sure of your 140 rupees a month job. It will always be there. And if you really want to, you can do a postgraduate degree in electronics. So he was a brilliant man, a great engineer, but his assessment of the future of electronics and related sciences, there were no related sciences at that time, but his assessment of the future of electronics and anything related to it was pretty bad. What changed all that? The later billions of young people came to electronics and computer science and demanded a seat. They said, we don't want any other branch, we want only electronics and computer science. And what made the difference for them? Partly the difference was these 15 ideas that Professor Rajaraman writes about. So when I go and sit down and read these 15 ideas, it's reliving my own life. These are the ideas that made a huge change in our way of life. There was something peculiar about this science, our technology. What is that? I still don't have an answer, but let me try and mention them. First, let's look at the impact, the size of the change it made. Let's talk about economic growth, and I will borrow a little statistics from other sources as well. The world GDP used to be $11 trillion. This is called the nominal GDP. That is just in the current dollar value level. It was $11 trillion in 1960. And now it is about a little more than $80 trillion. And this enormous growth, 8 times growth, rarely has happened in human history. The economic growth has been faster than the growth of the world population. A lot of people were pessimistic, very pessimistic about the world's future. But economic growth was driven partly by new developments, new ideas, innovations, of which information technology had more than its fair share. Researchers estimate that today IT alone is worth, IT and related things like business process outsourcing. These are worth, the digital economy is worth $11.5 trillion by themselves, which is equal to the world economy that was in 1960. And the IT sector accounts for 15.5% of the world GDP today. And it has been growing at 2.5 times. It has been growing 2.5 times faster than the overall world GDP. So What is this magic due to? What is special about the science? We'll talk about that. Much of that to understand, we have to read the book. When you read the book, you find how one idea built on top of another. Somebody builds a faster CPU, somebody finds a way of making it cheaper by putting the whole thing on a chip, and somebody else comes along and makes a new way of storing information and stores 10 times information for the same cost. All these things build one on top of the other. And how that magic, why it did not occur in other fields? Why did it occur in this field? It's a good question to ask, and I think some insight we get by reading the book. And I should compare this growth in the economy with more traditional sectors. For instance, IT accounts for 15.5%, agriculture accounts for 4%. In which year? You take your pick. In 2010, it was 4%. In 2020, it is the same 4%. So you can choose which year you want. But why did that agriculture grow that much? Why did it not? I have a hope that it will grow, because one interesting thing I see is information. All along, the world has been thought of and explained by saying there is space, time, matter, and energy. But then there is information. And the information is perhaps as fundamental as space and time and matter and energy. And information is not only electronics. Today, biology has been recognized as primarily being driven by information. And biology is undergoing the kind of change that our brand of engineering underwent. All of instrumentation and that part of engineering underwent a big change. Biology is undergoing the change. I think the next 16 years will be the time when we'll see an information revolution in biology. Okay, so let's move on. All this revolution has not passed India by. The amazing thing is, there is an animation on the web. You can see the world's countries listed by the GDP value. And India is sitting at the 20th rank or something like that in the year, I think the 10th rank in the year 2000, in the year 1960. But what happens is, gradually India moves up almost 1 point every 2 years or 3 years and comes to the 5th rank now. And I think it's closer, it's probably 4th rank this year. Where has the growth come from? And fortunately, India has had its share of the growth, thanks to the Indian engineers and the other scientists who have been there. And did all this growth help only the electronics people and the computer science people? Of course not. I suspect the bankers got more money out of that than we ever got. And various others, everybody benefited from the growth of information technology. The book helps us to understand the key ideas in information technology and the great people behind, as Mrs. Brahmarajan said, Dharma said, that the great men, like they said, it is the man behind the machine. Now, the woman also has joined. The men and women behind the machines matter as much as the machines themselves. So, the book does justice, great justice, to the men and women behind. There is one woman, 59 years, and probably 40 men, but there is one woman there, Grace Moray Harper, who is credited with the work towards COBOL. And she has been, the US Navy has been very kind to her, given her tremendous recognition, given her tremendous freedom. You read about the Grace Murray Harper in the book. It's exciting. Any woman student, any female student should be very happy to read about Grace Murray Harper and what a pioneer she has been. It must have been quite difficult for Professor Rajaraman to select these 15 ideas, because there are things. How many Nobel Prizes have been covered? One. And there is one Nobel laureate who is mentioned, and he got the Nobel laureate for looking into the chip, putting a lot of electronics on an integrated circuit chip. He is there. But there are other Nobel laureates in electronics and computing who are not there. He has had to leave out some ideas, like, for instance, medical imaging. And how many lives medical imaging must have saved? I don't know. Great. And I would also think that the attention given to things like speech recognition, face recognition, natural language processing really must have been very difficult to leave out. There is a chapter on deep learning, but the thing is that alone doesn't do justice to all the developments in speech recognition and medical imaging. I suspect Professor Rajaraman has reserved them for the next book. And there must be many other things that he has reserved for the next book. And let's go on. It is not only engineering that one learns reading the book. There is a lot that engineers, computer computers are constantly saying. Engineers should have more knowledge. They should be prepared in certain other things other than just technology when they come to us. They should have this and they should have that and so on. And the book does a lot of justice to that kind of thing. I get reminded of the saying that the engineers are those guys who know how to get things done. And the managers are those guys who tell them what to get done. And the book does a lot of justice to the kind of thing that managers should know. Again, I get reminded of a very interesting saying from Mr. Vittal, who was my boss in the Department of Electronics at one time. And the people used to ask him, "Aap electronics engineer hai kya?" He was the secretary for electronics. And the people were asking him, therefore, "Are you an electronics engineer?" He said, "No, nahi. I'm electronics engineer ka baap hai." It turned out his son was an electronics engineer. So he used to pun on that and say, "I'm an electronics engineer ka baap hai." And Professor Rajaraman's book deals with the kind of things that managers understand and value in addition to the technical stuff. He also understands institutions. He does justice to all this. He talks about great managerial decisions. He talks about great institutions which promoted such decisions. Like, for instance, here is an example. I knew the person concerned. I knew him personally, but I had not read the story till I read the book. And the story is, this young man, he is doing his PhD at Harvard, and the time comes when the thesis is ready, and the date for the graduation is set. The family has been informed that they are prepared for the travel, and he is ready. Meanwhile, he has been offered a job, he has accepted it, and with all this, the wonderful thesis committee at the last minute turns down his thesis. It's a lot about implementation, It is not enough mathematics. We can give you a PhD. So the young man calls the manager who had given him a job. He says, I'm sorry, these guys have turned me down. I don't have a PhD now. The manager says, that's all right. You come and join us anyway and complete your PhD here and put in what the committee wants you to put in. And what is such a great institution? It was the Xerox Palo Alto lab. And who was the man? The young man was Bob Metcalf, one of the inventors of the Ethernet. And he comes there, and there is more. I won't tell you the whole story. The greatness of the University of Hawaii, which welcomes the young man to go and study one of their ideas and to improve, etc., etc. So it is that kind of thing, things that tell you, aha, that is a great institution. That was a great manager. That is what made them so great. Then he also tells us the story of a couple of students who decided to drop out before getting the degree. Their professor encourages them. And he put some of his own money into the startup, the young man was starting. I don't think it was a huge amount of money. It's maybe $1,000 or something like that. But the professor put some money, I don't know how much he put in. But the startup they started grows and grows and grows and becomes the world's biggest internet company. And now has a market cap. Now it might be even more, but at the time it was written, the market cap can be $741 billion. And by the way, since Professor Rajaraman, who was the professor concerned to encourage these guys by putting his own money? He had been a graduate of the first batch of the Computer Science Department of IIT Kanpur. I hope Professor Rajaraman took some money from him also. In advance, he should have taken. Better still, he could have put some money. We could have put $1,000 into it, given it to the student who was leaving IIT Kanpur. So in case you fund any startup, buy some shares for me. Professor Rajaraman would have huge amount of money by now. Anyway, the institution from the students dropped out of was Stanford. You can imagine what makes great universities. I will conclude by saying that this book is a rare one of its genre. I am glad Prentice Hall doesn't only publish books for use in college and class and so on, and that it publishes books of this kind, general reading books, books that will make an engineer truly literate. The rarity of such books is one reason why we in the engineering community do not read as much as we should. I remember the time when my daughter consulted one of my friends, Professor Krishnaya. She wanted to do management, and I wanted her to do physics in Caltech, and where she had an offer. And Krishnaya had a rough idea, so when I and my daughter turned up to see Krishnaya, he said, Preeti, what do you want to do? You want to do you go to a liberal arts college and get a real education, or you want to become an illiterate engineer like your daddy? She, of course, didn't want to become an illiterate engineer like her daddy and chose management. I think the breadth of view, the world view that is offered by the book, going far beyond technology, gives me the feeling that when I read a book like that, I make up a little for the absence of liberal education in my own life. And but perhaps there is another way of saying it. There was a time when I sat in a selection committee to select a vice president for an IT company. And I turned up and I asked them a question. Can you tell me the name of a good book, the best book that you read in the last year? The man looked puzzled, worried, and suffered a bit, and managed to remember one book. He said, yes, I have read the MySQL reference manual. That was the month of education that we get as engineers. And from that point of view, to me it appears if every computer science and every electronics engineer has to read one book, it should be this book. And not only the engineers, I think anyone who is going to earn a degree in any subject should read this book. And that is what makes me so excited about this book. I'm usually excited about the books that Professor Rajaraman writes, and I read them with interest. But this is very special. This is the real book encompassing the whole of what happened in the last 60 years and truly celebrating the revolution for what it has been. I'm grateful to Mohan and Subramanian for having invited me to be present and give this talk at this book launch. And I must now request either Professor Rajaraman or Dharma to wave the book in front of you, because the only thing I can wave is the electronic book here. You're much better if you wave the real book. Thank you. Very happy to ask you to the true authors of the book to wave it in front of everybody and thereby launch the book. Thank you. And I will be waiting for the sequel to this book.
How can we read the book from Kolkata? How can we read the book from Kolkata?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Rajaraman, nice seeing you. Nice, so many stalwarts. I'm glad to see so many stalwarts. Srinivasan Singh, Ramani, so many stalwarts are there. So if I name, I'll be missing many. So I do not want to name. I'm grateful to see Patak, Ramani, Rajaraman, and so many people.
Mr. Kundu, let us hear Professor Rajaram first, then we can talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me properly? Am I
Yes, sir.
audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a very pleasant occasion, and at the outset, I'd like to thank Mr. H.R. Mohan for taking the initiative to organize this function. As Dharma said, it's a 25th book, but it's the first book which is being launched. No other book of mine has ever been launched. Okay. And the initiative taken by Mohan is really came as a surprise to me, because I'm not used to such launch functions. I normally thought that book launches are for fiction or for non-fiction and other types of books, and technical books hardly ever get launched. But of course, this is not really a technical book. It is a hybrid. It has a lot of technology, but it also has a lot of history about the technology and about the people who are involved in the technology. Let me at the outset thank, besides Mr. Mohan, the CSI President of Chennai, Mr. P.V. Subramaniam, and the IEEE Computer Society Chairman of Chennai, Dr. Shakti. So they all three societies CSI, ACM, and IEEE have organized this function. And it is very, very nice that they're all cooperating and doing this nice job. I thank Dr. Ramani for his very nice compliments and, as usual, his humorous speech. And very thankful to him that he agreed to release this book. I am forever thankful to Mr. Ashok Ghosh because, as he said, he has been my publisher from the very first book till the current book. And except for one book was given to a different publisher for reasons which are, because it came out in a series from the GNC, all the other books were essentially published by PHI Learning, originally Prentice Hall of India. And let me say something about the genesis of the book. About 5-6 years ago, there's an international conference held in Bangalore, and they requested me to give a keynote speech. And I thought a little about it and what to talk about. And I felt that the best thing to do would be to kind of recount what has happened in the area of computing from the year I entered the computing profession. That is 1955. 1955, I entered the profession primarily by building nonlinear units for an analog computer. The world was more analog than digital in 55. Then, of course, transformed myself up to the current time. And at the end of the meeting, many people collared me at the tea time and said, why don't you write it up? It's a very, very, very interesting talk. And of course, I thought about it, and it took me some time to collect my thought. And I finally decided to write an article for a journal called Resonance, published by the Indian Academy of Sciences, primarily for students of science and engineering. And I had a bias towards Resonance because I was one of the founding editors of that journal. So I went ahead and wrote this, and this is the first time I had written something which is semi-popular, that is not a textbook, but not a technical paper, but a paper which is more general. So I thought it would be a good idea to get it reviewed by non-computer scientists. So I got hold of a number of friends, physicists, chemists, even some homemakers, and a pre-university student, and I sent this manuscript to all the 16. In fact, in the original manuscript, I had only 12 breakthroughs, whole dozen. Then I got feedback from many of them, and particularly I was concerned about use of jargon, which we take for granted, and many of them don't understand. In fact, one of the interesting queries I got was, in fact, from Mrs. Ramani. She said, "What is an operand?" Okay, and I rewrote them and removed words like operand, or whenever I use a word like operand, explain what it is. Okay, so that a general person who is not a technical person can understand what these words mean. And at the end of this, there are also many suggestions that I should actually include more breakthroughs. And after some thought, I added 2 more and had 14 breakthroughs and wrote it as an article. It became too long and not too long for a single issue of the journal. So what I did was to break it up into 3 parts and requested the chief editor of Resonance, Dr. Satyamurthy at that time, and he's even now the chief editor, and requested him to publish it in 3 consecutive issues of the journal so that there will be some continuity. So these 3 articles are published in 2018 in I think July, August, and September 2018. And one of the reviewers who had read this, read my articles was Dr. D. Balasubramanian, who is of course a very well-known science writer, besides being a great chemist. And he suggested, why don't you put the biographies of people and also some background about how these inventions came about. But because of page limitations in the journal, I just couldn't add these things because it would have become very, very long. Then afterwards, I sat down and thought, why not convert it into a book? And a reasonable, not a very thick book, but a book around less than 200 pages. So that people will not be, they'll essentially have a easy to carry and be able to, they'll not get, a little worried about having to read a huge book. And then of course I went and looked at Google to see whether anybody else has published a similar book. And to my surprise, there is no book at all except one popular book called Innovators. The book Innovators was written by Walter Isaacson. Walter Isaacson also wrote a book, The Official Biography of Steve Jobs. He is a journalist and a historian combined. It's a very nice book, about 500 odd pages, starting from Babbage and ending up with, in fact, doesn't even come to deep learning. It concludes somewhere earlier. And the problem with that book was that besides its size, it was mostly gossip. A lot of gossip about people and how they went about inventing and the circumstances under which they found themselves and so on. And it's not technology at all. I being a technologist, is more biased towards discussing the technology besides the people behind the technology. Then I started writing the book in December 2018 and finished writing it, the first draft, in June 2019. About 6 months it took. And because it is it was meant to be a general popular book, I sent it to a friend of mine, Dr. T. Dhanapal, who is a PhD in English, and also he was working in the Tamil Nadu State Council for Science and Technology. So he also knows technology, for doing a style editing and telling me what words are improperly used and what jargon still remains. And he did an excellent job and sent me back his version, which had better style and had less grammatical errors and so on. And then I didn't know to whom it gives, to whom to give this book, because it's not a textbook. And PHI Learning mostly publishes textbooks, so I'm somewhat concerned. But then, of course, I sent the manuscript to PHI Learning, and at the beginning, I got a feedback saying that it will be published as an ebook, and I was not very happy because I thought ebook is okay, but I would like to have a print edition. And I called Mr. Ghosh, and Mr. Ghosh and told him that I would like to have a print book, and he immediately agreed. In fact, at that time, apparently he was in a book show in England, and he didn't take more than 2 minutes to say, yes, I'll go ahead and publish the print book. And so the print book was, the manuscript was sent to PHI Learning in December 2019. and I got the first draft of the book in mid-January. And I started, of course, proofreading and so on. And I'm grateful to both Shivani Garg, who's an editor in Print All India, and Mr. Ajit Das, who did all the typesetting and styling and all those issues. And I got the first draft sometime in January. Then the grunt work started. Writing a book, the easy part is writing the book. The difficult part is the rest of it, like preparing the index and acknowledgements and so on. In this book, there is a lot of pictures which I use, and I had acknowledged from where the pictures are taken, and in some cases take permission. And that took some time, and finally by the end of February the final book was ready and ready to go for printing. Then of course I thought it will come out by March end or so, and March end COVID came, and the book went into cold storage, and I thought the book is gone along with COVID. But fortunately, I think when Delhi was opened up, then Mr. Ghosh took this book on priority, and in August of this year, the book was finally published, the print version. In fact, before the print version came, the e-version was in the market. Now, I should say something about the book. How do I define an invention as a groundbreaking invention? Because the title of the book says Groundbreaking Inventions in ICT. I have to give a set of criteria on what I mean by groundbreaking. So the criteria are that the idea must be novel, whatever is invented must fulfill a need, it will improve our productivity, change the way in which computing is done and computers are used, leads to more innovations from that, and it should have a long life, just not transient, which just comes and goes in a flashbang, and create new industries and lead to further innovations, and in the process may destroy existing industries. Like for instance, film industry is destroyed by the coming of the CCDs and the digital cameras, and transform the way in which we live. That is, there should be societal changes. In fact, today you're having this web-based release, and we would not have ever thought that our society will change to such an extent that when something like COVID comes, we can still have such a function with people participating not only from India, but from, in fact, one of my students is logged in from Tasmania, another from California. So people can participate from all over the world. And if it had been in Bangalore, only Bangalore people would have come. And so the entire new invention of the World Wide Web has transformed the entire way in which we live and carry out our daily life. In fact, nowadays you can't see a person without a mobile phone. Half the time when they go on the street, they're talking. At the beginning, I thought they were talking to themselves. And later on, in the early days, it looked like a mad person talking to himself. Later on, I found they had a headphone inside and Bluetooth, and they're talking to a phone. I decided to include innovations from the time I entered the profession, because I didn't want to start with Charles Babbage and so on. So I said I want to start after 55. So the innovations I have in this book are Fortran in 57, integrated circuits in 1958, RDBMS in 1970, local area networks in 1973, personal computers in 1975, public key encryption in 1976, computer graphics in 1977, internet in 1983, GPS in 1983, World Wide Web in 89, search engines in 1990, digitalization and compression in 1993, mobile computing in 1999, cloud computing in 2006, and deep learning in 2011. So there are a total of 15 groundbreaking innovations which are discussed in this book. The structure of each innovation is it starts with the description of the invention, including the motivation. Why was it invented? How was it invented? What led to its invention? Then technical description of the invention, as far as possible, with minimum amount of jargon, and more detailed description of the invention in boxes, where, for instance, when I talk about integrated circuits, I have a box which talks about how transistors work, and another box how integrated circuits are actually made. So in the first reading, a person can leave that out. Only those who are interested more in technology can go through the boxes. So there are boxes which can be left out in the reading without loss of continuity. And also the boxes for the inventors. The inventors are also put in boxes. Their biography, how they invented, and so on. For instance, in some cases, the invention is by a person, but it became very, very important only through marketing and not by the inventor. And besides the people who invented, I also, at the end of each invention, I argue, again going back to my original set of criteria, how they fulfill these criteria. The criteria which I have enunciated, they must fulfill. And that is my, that is the teacher's attitude. Having said something, why I had to explain why I picked that, and explain that why I call it groundbreaking. There's an interesting part about, at the end of the book, I thought, what are the common traits of all these inventions? And one thing I found was that most of them had a very long gestation period. For instance, the idea of digitization of analog signals came about in 1926, in fact. And it became useful only in the 80s. In other words, it took such a long time for the idea to fructify into an actual product or something which came into the market. And in fact, apart from digitization and compression, many of them are take a long gestation period. And I really had difficulty in pinpointing the year of a particular invention. For instance, computer graphics. The original idea of graphics and the first graphics program was written by Ivan Sutherland in his PhD thesis in the late 50s. But the graphic, as we know today, came only around 1977. And it took such a long time because one of the problems was there's no proper display device. And of course, Sutherland solved that problem by designing a display device. Evans and Sutherland, a company was formed, and they made the display device and made graphics usable. In other words, many of the inventions took a long time. There are many inventions where the inventors persisted in spite of discouragement from the management. For instance, the relational database management system was invented by Card, but IBM was very lukewarm because they already had a database system called Information Management System, and they didn't want to lose the market, and they didn't feel that the RDMS was important till Oracle came along and became a competitor to IBM. And similarly, World Wide Web, the manager of Tim Berners-Lee was very lukewarm. He said, it doesn't look like very interesting. But he persisted, and he went along and finally came up with the World Wide Web. And many of the inventions which are in the book came because of huge investments put in by the US government. Internet wouldn't have come without a huge amount of money being spent by the government of US. GPS was a project by the US Defense, which also took billions of dollars because they had to put about 24 satellites in the orbit before GPS could come. And many technologies required maturing of other technologies before they could become realistic. Like PCs depended on integrated circuits getting into becoming microprocessors. Without microprocessors, PCs wouldn't have come. And graphics needed display devices. Many cases, standardization made the technology grow rapidly. For instance, Ethernet was an invention of Metcalfe and Xerox, but he was very careful to kind of try to get it standardized by first having Hewlett-Packard, Xerox, and Intel to cooperate, and later on get IEEE to standardize the Ethernet protocol. And Wi-Fi, similarly, became popular only because IEEE came up with a IEEE Wi-Fi standard. And standardization has become extremely important, not only in these, but also in, for instance, JPEG and many of the inventions, which are universally used because of the fact that they are standardized by standards bodies. Almost all inventions, except probably 2, came from USA. And why is it that USA has come up with all these inventions? Mostly it's because of massive funding by the government in many cases, and willingness of people to take risks. And like Bill Gates took a risk of leaving his education in the middle and come and start a large company. And many cases like that. And like the idea of PCs came from Wozniak, but it became popular only because of Steve Jobs' marketing skills. His marketing skill and being able to sell the product really made PCs catch up. In fact, earlier people thought, why would people like to have computers in their homes? I mean, computers are supposed to be in large organizations. Some of the inventions bloomed in UK, but were never commercialized. For instance, a good search engine was designed, something similar to the web crawler, which Google uses, was actually invented first by a person in UK and in Stirling University. And he wanted to pursue, but there's no funding available. And the university didn't have the funding, and there's no venture capital kind of an idea in UK. Whereas in USA, many of the inventions by students were taken up by venture capitalists, and they gave money, and so that they could go ahead and do it. Public key encryption, for instance, was invented in UK by Ellis, Cox, and Williamson in the US Defense Lab, UK Defense Lab. But it is kept under wraps by the UK Defense Department, and so it didn't see the light of day. In the meantime, Diffie, Hellman, and Merkel came up with their public key encryption and wrote a paper and published it. So any invention requires, apart from huge funding, so risk-taking, and also the environment, like venture capital and so on, to bloom. So at the end of the book, I hope that you'll look at these conclusions and be able to kind of understand how groundbreaking inventions bloom. And one of the questions which one of the participants had asked was that why is it that no such groundbreaking invention has come from India? And the answer, of course, is simple. We don't have a culture of, for a long time, of risk-taking, venture capital, and huge government funding, and large groups of people cooperating together to design a product. And in any case, I think the future, hopefully in this century, we will come up with some groundbreaking inventions. And when somebody else writes a book, you know, say 30 or 40 years from now, most of the inventions hopefully will be from our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajaraman.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Computer Society of India Chennai Chapter, ACM Chennai Professional Chapter, IEEE Computer Society Madras Chapter, we wholeheartedly thank HR Mohan, Chairman, ACM Chennai Chapter, Mr. Ashok Ghosh, PHI Learning, and Professor Ramani, and Madam Dharma and Professor V. Rajaraman for accepting our request and participating in this book launch function of groundbreaking innovations in information and communication technology. So you have explained everything and what is the groundbreaking innovations, etc. So you have mentioned about the novelty, increase in productivity, innovations, the long life of the inventions, create a new industry and destroying of old industry and how it has transformed. So you have very well explained the groundbreaking innovations. So some of the participants have asked, so you have already asked one question, why are not involving like innovating like Silicon Valley? Most of the inventors are from India. So what is the difference between Indian education system and the education system in US? Whether how the education system in US is organized like that you have asked. And I would like to hear from you, Professor.
I just told you that primarily it's a question of risk-taking, question of venture capital being available, and also in many cases huge amount of government funding, which goes to both universities and research labs, and also companies like Bell Labs and Intel and Xerox, having spent huge amount of money in R&D. They are not there. They are looking way ahead. In fact, Xerox, in spite of being a copier company, came up with Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, which really invented a huge number of new things, including the graphical user interface, the mouse, the laser printer, and many such things. In fact, you know, our industries, in fact, we don't really have any hardware industry, what the name in this country. Most of the IT industries are service industries, and even them, I think they hardly spend anything in R&D. And the R&D funding which is given by the government to universities is suboptimal. It is not enough. It's not one way or the other. It is suboptimal. And also large groups are not formed. Groups are all quite small. And for instance, if you take a place like University of California, Berkeley, from where many inventions come, the Department of Computer Science has around 100 faculty and a huge amount of funding, whereas I don't think that any place in India has that large number of faculty. And things are changing, of course.
So thank you, Professor. And another question, programming has been the most wanted skills for high quality computing. So how do you find programming education in our country as compared to the quality of computer education in other parts of the world?
Programming reasonably good. I think it's not. It is not too bad. Programming is easy to teach because it doesn't require, with the advent of PCs and so on, it's much easier. But many things are learned by students by themselves. They are not afraid to experiment. And so programming languages and programming is something which I think it's not as difficult to learn as to be able to design hardware systems. And of course, some of the newer programming systems and languages still come from outside. And we are not, of course, come up with everything like Perl or PHP and so on.
So thank you, Professor. You have listed the groundbreaking inventions from Fortran to deep learning. So we should think of an exhibition of various inventions from the beginning of this technology, like punch card, punching machines, accounting machines like tabulators, sorter, computers such as IBM 1401 systems, 360 ICL, 1901, etc. Then different languages and the tapes, etc. So what is your opinion on that, sir?
I don't fully understand. I mean, of course, we have graduated from punch cards. I think the first big revolution was that when the PCs came, punch cards disappeared. Okay, because you can directly key in and interact with the machine. Once you have an interactive computer, you get to a different dimension. In fact, I remember the first course I took in programming. The professor came into the class. There's abroad, and 1957, and he said this course is about assembly language programming for the IBM 704. There's something called Fortran in the horizon. It's too advanced for this course, and that is the kind of beginning when when I started programming. I had to look at the card and understand what is 11 punch, 12 punch, and so on. And a lot of my time was wasted kind of looking at the card and understanding the punches and so on. And within about a month, I lost interest. I said, I do a program and it takes 2 days to get the results back. And then I correct it. And then I find that I missed a comma. And so in fact, I hated programming at the beginning. And I came back to programming only after 57, I came back to programming seriously only in 61. 3-4 years, I was more happy with analog computing because analog computers are interactive. I could actually see, as I change parameters, I could see the effect of change of parameters immediately on the oscilloscope. So it kind of aided me in my design ideas and thinking. Whereas digital computers didn't have that feature at all in those days. Now, of course, the world has changed.
Thank you, Professor. Next question, what do you think has been the most groundbreaking innovation that is allowing us to communicate across the world?
I think undoubtedly Internet is probably the greatest invention of this century. It has transformed the world. Internet is easily picked.
Thank you very much, Professor. These are some of the questions organized by participants of this webinar. Now, I would like to invite...
Shakti, can I just take 1 minute?
Yes, sir.
There are a few more questions have come. One from Hari Balakrishnan, Professor Rajaraman. Can you tell me the secret of how you go about writing books?
Well, actually, the whole thing happened at the beginning when I had to write notes for my students, because there are no good books available, and those books which are available were very expensive. So as Dharma said, the first set of notes was published by the graphic arts section of our institute in Kanpur. And then Dharma is the one who kind of told me, why not write it as a book? Okay, so once I wrote it, then whenever I taught a course, I always wrote notes for that course and gave it to the students. And in fact, when I was teaching for 1 year in Berkeley, the secretaries, we had a secretarial pool to whom we had to go and give our manuscript for them to type out. And they used to complain, "You're the writingest professor in our department," because I used to give notes for every class. And the notes then became a book later on. It takes some time. So the secret of writing books is that when you teach, you really start writing writing notes or explaining to the students, and the notes are reasonably well written. You already have a skeleton. Once you have a skeleton, you fill it up and write it up as a book. Doesn't take too long, but does take time, and you have to devote at least 2-3 hours a day. You have to set aside 2 or 3 hours a day, and unless you do it continuously, every evening or every night. In fact, when I was young, I was doing it every night after dinner. And of course, nowadays, I don't do that. Okay. And of course, you must have support from your family. Dharma didn't tell you that, well, why are you always sitting and writing? Why don't we watch TV together? Okay. So we don't require, she became a partner in this book writing, because every book she proofread and improved my English. So I think it also requires somebody who kind of encourages you when you write.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor. The next question.
There's one more question about new education policy stresses promotion of Indian languages. Any plan of getting this book in Indian languages?
Well, I don't have any plan, but if anybody wants to translate, I think translation rights can easily be obtained from PHI Learning. In fact, Dharma's book, which was called Computer as a Child's Play, was written in English, was translated into Hindi by Dr. Om Vikas, translated into Kannada by the support of the Karnataka State Science and Technology. In fact, her book was the first book to be released by Sena Rao. Sena Rao was the chairman of the Karnataka State Board, and he released that book, and it's translated into Tamil. Interestingly, the Kannada and Tamil, and also I think Mr. Ghosh took the initiative to get it translated into Bengali. So the book was translated into Tamil, Kannada, and Bengali and Hindi. Interestingly, the book in Tamil as well as Kannada went through 3 prints, whereas the book written in Hindi almost had kind of after the first print, it just disappeared. I don't know about the Bengali book. I think reading habits are somewhat better in South India compared to North India. That's my observation.
Okay.
In fact, technical books are difficult to translate into some of the Indian languages, and Tamil Nadu has taken a lot of initiative. Many of the technical terms have been given an equivalent Tamil term. And similarly, Karnataka also has taken an initiative.
Sir, any thoughts on why our contributions to open source is lower?
Open source?
Any thought, yeah, open source, contributions to open source. Why it is lower? Yeah.
From India, I'm not aware. In fact, I'm not really aware of anything which is open source, which has become, widely used from India. If somebody else knows, I think, because
Okay.
I'm not aware.
There is one question from Hema Gopal. How to make students get more interested in developing large programs in any language where they understand applying logic, standards, and performance better, as most of them are happy to learn disruptive technologies, but not fundamentals of programming.
That's up to the teacher and the kind of assignments you give. If you give a term paper which requires a fair amount of design know-how, then at the end of the term they have to write a term paper and write a huge program with it. So it's up to the teacher to kind of make the students have a design attitude towards whatever they do.
Okay. Now, Shaktivel, you can take over. Shaktivel? PVS?
Sir, the last question. How did you balance your time for writing books, preparing for class, regular routine work, beyond all time for your family?
Well, the balancing is somewhat difficult. In fact, the worst thing I was doing in my career was administration. That used to take a lot of time and thankless job, but somebody had to do it. So I ended up doing a lot of administration. But in fact, to forget about all that administrative problems, I used to write at night. Okay. So I kind of forget about it and then get into a different mode.
One more question, sir. It would be nice to hear your thoughts on how the innovations you have talked about have the potential to impact global concerns today, such as sustainable ecosystems and healthcare, especially with growing urban population.
Healthcare, of course, as Dr. Ramani talked about the medical imaging and remote consultation by doctors, and a lot of things being done remotely with the applications, with the innovations like World Wide Web and so on. And I think the world has changed, and the web and search engines have really made life very different. And of course, mobile phones and availability of smartphones and being able to talk to anybody at any time has completely changed our world.
Thank you very much for your valuable time, Professor. Now I invite Mr. P.V. Subramaniam, Chairman, Computer Society of India, Chennai Chapter, for proposing the formal vote of thanks.
Good evening. We had witnessed an important and enjoyable event this evening. This is a milestone event for us. On behalf of CSI Chennai Chapter, ACM Chennai Chapter, IEEE CS Madras Chapter, we thank the distinguished speakers, Padma Bhushan, Professor B. Rajaraman, Emeritus Professor, IISc Bangalore, Dr. S. Ramani, former Professor, IIT Bangalore, Mrs. Dharma Rajaraman, and Mr. Ashok Ghosh, Managing Director, PHI Learning, New Delhi, and Ms. Shivani Garg, and others at PHI, and all the participants for attending this great event today evening. Thank you. Over to Mr. Mohan.
Before we formally conclude the event, I would like to thank Mr. Ashok, the Managing Director of PHI Learning, for extending a special discount of 35% on the cover price of the book. to all the participants and also those who have registered for this program. So we will be sending you the discount code along with the video recordings of the proceedings and the first chapter of the book as a compliment from PHI Learning by mail in few days. Maybe by this weekend you will be receiving mail from us. And I take this opportunity in informing you about our future programs. There are 2 more programs are happening in this month. That is one on 26th and one on 29th. The 26th program is how to navigate your happy career. On 29th, we have a program on web design using WordPress. In the month of October, we have planned about 10 programs. The first half of the programs include on 3rd of October, we have a program on demystifying death and organ donation. On 6th, we have a program on athletic protocols. On 10th, we have a program on the status of science and technology research in India. Dr. T. Ramaswamy, the former Secretary of Department of Science and Technology, will be the guest of honor. And Mr. Arun Agarwal, who has written a book on science and technology in India, what next, will be the main speaker. So we will be sending the formal invitation to all the participants, and please make it convenient to register and attend. Thank you very much. Now with this, we like to close, and those who want to interact with Professor Rajaraman and Dr. Ramani, please unmute yourself and then start speaking.
May I suggest that everybody unmutes and gives a large clap so that it can be heard and recorded?
Yes, yes, I agree with Professor.
Thanks to all the speakers and all the participants from Calcutta. Thanks to all the speakers and participants from Calcutta.
Thank you, Kundu.
I can see a lot
Thank
of
you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
lot of nice faces. Lot of old, nice and excellent faces.
Thank you, Dr. Rajaraman, and thank you, Dharma. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Rajaram. Thank you. Great.
For our students.
Thank you, Rajaraman. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice, sir.
All right. Okay. Good night.
Thanks a lot. That's a great night.
I can see CB Singh after a few years.
Yeah.
CB Singh after a few years. Rajaraman also after a few years.
I have a privilege of my association with Professor Rajaraman for 57 years. The first batch of the 63, we were the first batch of students under Rajaraman in IIT Kanpur.
Actually, to see so many stalwarts in one place, credit goes to H.R. Mohan. Credit goes to H.R. Mohan and his team for showing so many nice
Mohan is
faces.
great. Yeah, H.R. Mohan is the great job, Mohan. That's a great job done.
Oh, thank you.
Mohan, I owe you a cup of tea. I owe you a cup of coffee. You like coffee.
Is that time now?
It's nice. The very well organized. Very well. I must say that it's a pleasure to attend such program, and I'm sure we'll continue to attend such events because we don't know how long it will continue.
I was a little late in joining the program, but I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Goodbye, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Rajaraman. This is Sampath, your student. Thank you, Madam. Professor, you are inspirational to the entire community, not only in India, to the world. Professor Ramani, I'm happy to see you. I don't know whether you remember in those days of KBCS, I used to visit NCSC, and I'm happy to see you a pioneer in India when you started artificial intelligence and knowledge management. We see now how it is matured in the industry. Happy to see you, Professor Ramani. Next time when I am visiting Bangalore, I want to see you with Professor Rajaraman. Professor Rajaraman, you are an iconic figure and you contribute great to the education and to the economy, I can say, in India. You continue to be an inspiration to the millions of people around the world. Thank you very much, Professor.
Generous offering to donate few books to the Tamil Nadu. To donate 50 books to the schools in Karnataka, sir. So he will be in touch with Shivani.
Hello. Possible to speak to Professor Rajaraman? Hello.
Hello.
Professor Rajaraman,
Yes.
it was inspiring to listen to you. Prabhu here.
Hello.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
It was inspiring to listen to you. I'm itching to read the book now. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Right. Please.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hello, this is Rajan from UK. Can I speak to Professor Rajaram, please?
I'm on.
Hello, he's on.
Yes.
Hello, he's on.
Hello. Mine's on.
Hello.
Make it on.
Good evening.
Yeah, he said yes.
Make it on.
How are you? We enjoyed the lecture.
Shall we formally close the meeting?
People are wanting to speak to you, sir.
Yes.
Two more people are wanting to speak to you, no?
Okay.
We'll take two.
Okay.
No, he did. He did respond. He didn't respond to you.
I didn't.
Yeah, man.
That's one name, Nanda. Hello.
Hello.
Is Professor Rajaram speaking?
Rajaram here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hear very well.
Can you hear now?
Is money there? Muted.
They're all leaving.
Huh?
They're all leaving.
Okay.
Vatsala Rajan, someone wanted to speak. Vatsala Rajan.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Varadarajan.
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
Speaking from UK,
Can't hear you.
Newcastle.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So my
I
hearing.
saw you also earlier.
You apologize for that. But I enjoyed the lecture. You covered a lot of subjects, and it was quite interesting. Even though I must be very ignorant about computers, but I enjoyed it on the whole.
Thank you. And you should read the book.
Excellent.
Namaskar, what's up, Mr. Definitely, I will read the book. I was wondering whether I should contact the university here to publicize it.
Now you can contact www.phindia.com.
Okay. Yeah, okay. But about publicizing the book,
phindia.com.
Can I speak? Yeah, I have contact with the university, local university here, Newcastle. Can I contact them and publicize your book?
Yeah, please. As much
okay.
as possible is welcome.
Okay, definitely. I'll do that. I'll try my best.
In fact, I saw that the UK.
Okay.
UK
Nice
to
see you.
UK company, but extremely expensive.
Yeah, we are all still.
UK, they put it at some 17 pounds. Way out, huge. The market is huge.
I had look at the Amazon. It's only £6 on Amazon.
Say something about it.
No. It's available on Amazon UK. It's only £6.
No, I'll tell you one thing. I want to get his signed copy.
No,
How can he can send it from there? Hello?
E-book is in the discount. Also,
Is it possible to... I know you have to put the publisher. We would like to have a copy with your front address to Prabhakar at the front of the book with all and then send. Is it possible with your signature and everything? Signed copy.
Yes, it is. It is possible. I mean, I have not. I have. And this all got.
You are getting old. At least he'll treasure that book for a long time.
Signature they can put it. And
he's very much into IT, very much so. Okay, we often about you. Sorry, okay. Nice talking to you.
Okay.
Swarnavatara, please. Swarnavatara.
Yes. How are you?
Yes, sir.
Arunadha is keeping quiet. She has become a good girl now.
Your books. Can you hear me, Professor? Professor Rajaraman?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Somewhat.
I hear your books very extensively while teaching programming to my students.
Oh, thank you.
You were still in Kanpur at that time. And I was teaching here in BMS College of Engineering. And then my mind goes down the memory lane. After you moved to Bangalore, and during one of the CSI programs I had invited you, I was actually the chairperson of the chapter at that time. And after your lecture, many of my students came and touched your feet, and they thanked me profusely for having given an opportunity to them to see you and to talk to you. And just at that time, you had written a book on parallel processing. Do you remember, Professor?
Yes.
One of the very early books. And that day, the publisher had brought your book, a bunch of books there. Not one copy was left. Everything was picked up by my students. So, memory, actually, you have done yeoman's service, not only to the, actually, even to the teaching community, I would say. Your books very beautifully and supported by the programs written and by Mrs. Dharma. My students, in fact, they talked to her also, appreciated her programs and things like that in the book. I don't know whether Madam remembers that. So this is a yeoman service you have done, sir, to the scientific, computing community, especially to the students and to the teachers. You made their jobs, your books made their jobs very easy. After your books came out, none of the books on, say, Fortran, COBOL, or C, none of those were used by other authors, were used by my students. They always refer to your books.
Thank you, Shanna.
Thanks a lot, sir. From here, I seek your blessings, both of your blessings. Thanks a lot. Lovely meeting you. Lovely meeting you.